All right, running down my armpit. Sweet. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we are continuing along on Project Cheapskate. That's my $500 X5. That's right, I said $500. I bought a non-running, non-driving 2010 BMW X5. Last episode, we got it running. This episode, I'm hoping to get it driving. What we're working on is our transmission. And if you recall, there's a problem. The problem is that there is a crack in the tranny pan, but I cleaned and immediately fluid starts dripping out of the pan. The previous owner told me it didn't want to go into gear, out of gear, slipping, all sorts of different things happening. I couldn't verify any of that. The car didn't start when I bought it.
I make bad choices.
I'm guessing it's very low on fluid. I'm not going to add fluid to it like I decided last time, because that would be a waste. I know the pan's cracked and I got to take it off to deal with it. So in this episode, what we're going to talk about, or what we're actually going to do, is we're going to pull the pan off to replace it. We're going to do a fluid exchange, being that we're pulling the pan off. While we're in there, famous last words, we're going to pull the Mechatronics unit down, and we're going to replace the 4 sealing sleeves and the bridge seal, as well as the Mechatronics seal itself to the outside. These are all common failure points on, this is a 6 HP 19Z transmission, I believe, in the X5. And all of these points like to fail, at least the rubber fails. By doing that, hopefully we're going to address any other issues that might have been happening with this transmission. Along those same lines, when we're done and we're done checking our fluid, we're gonna clear the adaptations with our little Foxwell scanner so that, well, the tranny can reset and relearn the way it's supposed to. If you don't clear the adaptations, it's not going to run properly. It will over time reset itself. But the adaptations are the transmission learning its slip points based off of a lot of different factors. How much wear there is, what the fluid is like, because old fluid is going to operate different than new fluid. We'll get to that point. For now, let's talk about the tools that we're gonna need. We've got a 10mm Allen for the drain, a big bucket to catch everything, a T40 for all of the bolts, and to get the heat shield off of the side, a 13mm wrench. That should cover just about everything we need on the outside. When we get inside to get the Mechatronics off, we'll cover that. In the repair instructions, it says to drop this mount down, which means we'd have to disconnect the transfer case, pull off all of the underbody paneling, drop the exhaust, all sorts of stuff. I'm gonna see if we can do this without that, because the Mechatronic sealing sleeve is up hidden in this cavity there that my hand's not gonna fit in, but I'm sure as heck gonna try. All right, so we're gonna start by getting this thing draining. I've had my pan here for all of like 4 minutes. We've already got a drip that's come down off of the pan. That crack is enough to be problematic, and it could lead to the fact that this transmission is toast. Now, obviously, I'm hoping that that's not the case. Okay, I've got a hat, safety glasses on, because this is gonna splash. There we go. Now, oftentimes you're going to hear people say, well, you should always pop open the fill plug before you drain transmission, oil pan, whatever the case. That's not wrong. I should pop open the fill plug. However, the transmission pan is cracked. Crap. So no matter what I do, the pan has to come off. Because of that, I didn't even worry about it. I know that I'm gonna have to get that fill plug off at the end of the day, no matter what. This fluid does smell horrible. I really hope the tranny's not cooked. So here's our stubby adapter that we're gonna be using. This is an 8mm stubby. I think this is a snap-on, I'm not really sure. Let's see, I'll put that like that. And there's our drain plug right up in there, that's our fill plug. You want to make sure that when you get your adapter in there, or your Allen key, you get it in all the way. That way you don't strip it out. You can see just how rusty that guy is in there. Now we're going to apply a bit of torque and see if it'll move. Yeah, very nice, very nice. So something that I did 3 or 4 days ago was I went ahead and shot that thing with some penetrating oil. And then just a couple days after that, I shot it with penetrating oil again in anticipation that this could have been problematic. I knew that I was going to be working on the trans, so I was working to prepare for that inevitability. Now, I guess I do see the rear drain pan or the rear pan bolts are going to be a little tough to get to with the cross member on there. That could be a problem. Maybe I overshot that theory by thinking that I could leave those on there. Check out the difference between that one and that one. This stubby should fit in there to be able to get those guys out. Let's see, those rear drain pan bolts are the tough ones to get to. Put this thing on here. They're either 8 or 10 newton meters is their torque. So all I gotta do is break them free and then I'll be able to get those out. Well, it appears that I'm gonna have to drop this cross member. One of these bolts is pretty well stuck in there.
It's called defeat.
So for now, I'm just gonna move on and get this heat shield plate out of the way, just to get better access on this side. Heat shield out of the way. Bend your exhaust bracket a little bit. Open it up. That'll allow you to, there it is. Okay, we want to get our transfer case supported. That ought to do it. Now we got to take the mounting bolt out of the transfer case. We got an 18 on this side. That wasn't very tight. All right, so we've got, let's see, up under there, 1, 2, there's a third bolt. Where is it? Back here. On this side, we've got 1, 2, 3, and the splash panel. So it looks like I'm gonna have to drop this guy down anyhow. Try to take shortcuts, find an easier way. This bolt right there is completely stuck. That one's rusty, but I can get that out. And this one doesn't want to come out either.
No shortcuts.
Now we can really see all of our bolts. The exhaust might still get in the way a little bit. So I'm going to take all but one bolt out on either side. Actually, I can take this. Well, the exhaust might hold it. Looks like it wants to fall out of it. Yep. All right, be careful with that. That would have been a mistake to walk away from. That comes slamming down on my head. Make sure, like I said before, you have something there. It'd be a good time to check the fluid on our transfer case. Now that we have the rear brace dropped, we have full access to all the bolts pretty easily. So we're just gonna buzz everything off now. Of course they wanna come out, whoops, no problem with the impact gun. All right, this is bound to have quite a bit of fluid in it still. I recall when I did this on our F15 X5, quite a bit of fluid came out, but if I recall correctly, I think what I did on that was I punched a hole in the bottom of the pan since I was replacing it anyhow and let that drain out. But I'm just gonna grab an extra pan here. It actually feels quite stuck on there. Yep. Whoa. All right, fluid coming out the back. It actually worked out all right. Here's the inside of our tranny pan. You can see on the magnets there's a fair amount of debris, but there isn't anything super abnormal here. You're gonna see this type of contamination, debris, wear on a transmission that has almost 200,000 miles on it, at least to the best of my knowledge. So I'm not too worried about that. There were no chunks of anything in here. There's just the magnetic debris. That's what those magnets are there for, is to catch all of that material that comes off of the clutches and just around the trans. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. I can't really tell any signs inside here. This is the corner that was cracked of anything going on. I can feel where the seam is. Now that I'm painting it with all this metal, I can feel where the seam is on the outside. That's this corner area right here. That's where the crack was coming from, but I don't feel anything inside. I'm really not going to worry about it. The new pan's on there. It doesn't leak, so we can push forward. Over here where the filter goes in, you want to stick your finger up in there. Make sure that the gasket came off of or came out of the trans, that there's no O-ring or anything jammed up in there. If you were to miss that and it was double O-ringed, you're going to wind up with a leak inside of your pan, which is going to cavitate the pump and likely be quite troublesome for you. So stick your finger in it. Seriously. Okay, so under normal circumstances, I would prefer to do something like this. Drop the pan the night before, let this thing drip to infinity, but that's not how it worked out today. So if you have that opportunity, totally take it. Let it drain overnight and then come back to it later. For now, we're gonna move on to getting our Mechatronics plug out. There it is up there. Now we can see it. I like to use a pry bar to just get a little bit of leverage on this guy. Gently push her up and over. If the cord has too much tension up top, it'll be really difficult to get out. So pull that back. This area is actually in really good shape. Now, BMW recommends putting their special tool in the Mechatronic, you can't see anything past my hand there, in the Mechatronic sleeve there to protect the actual Mechatronics from static and all of that stuff. I don't have one. So don't stick your finger in the Mechatronic sleeve and hopefully we don't have a problem. Next up, we got to get our Mechatronic seal release here. So you pop this down and then this is going to come out. Again, I'm going to go back in with a pry bar and just slowly work on it. One hand here. Try to get up in the corner here. And I'm going to get a stronger or a narrower pry bar for this. Around 235. Now I can pry a little more liberally on here and hold it in place. Remember, don't stick your fingers in the Mechatronic sleeve as I stick my fingers in the Mechatronic sleeve. It's gonna be pretty darn tight in there. That guy's not going back in.
That's your sweet spot right there.
That did it right there. That upward leverage to kind of break that seal, that worked perfectly. You can see on the sleeve itself, there's this locking pin or identifying pin. There's two of them so that you slide it in the proper direction. And then inside, there's this identifying pin to slide in as well. We need to actually drop the Mechatronics. Now there are a couple of things to pay close attention to. One of them is our neutral switch here, which we can see we move back and forth, and it just sits down in this groove. So there's not really anything we have to do too much to worry about that. It's gonna come out with the Mechatronics. The other is get the sleeve out. We did that. Now we got to get the bolts out. We're gonna break all of these free one at a time. Here. There should be 20 millimeter and let's see, 58 millimeter. These are the 58s. Okay, now would be the time to take your time and hold this guy up, because if you drop this, you're dropping a few $1,000s on the floor, potentially. I've got a bolt in here still. It's weird. I am gonna put one back. One of the problems with filming is you spend a lot of time paying attention to filming, not as much attention to what you're doing. That looks like it goes up into the body for sure, as does this one. Yep, I just heard it release. That was it. Good thing I can retroactively put the picture on the video, since now that this will be done, I will know what I did. Yeah, now the fluid's really coming out. Get ready for a mess. Oh, for heaven's sakes. There's one more in this corner over here. One more. Yep, that's it. All right. Running down my armpit. Sweet. Okay. Carefully lower that guy. And where do I put it now? On the tranny pan. All right. Ow. Crap in my head. With the valve body down, these are our seals. So this is the bridge seal, and these are our 4, I think, solenoid seals. And I'm gonna get the camera up in there close, and you can see just how flat these guys are, almost perfectly flat across the bottom. Likewise with this one, there's not a whole lot of that seal left hanging off. That's part of what these vehicles run into, is these compress down to almost nothing, and it winds up causing leakage and trouble shifting. So we're gonna start with our bridge seal. We'll get this guy out here. I don't have my safety glasses on, so let's throw a rag up here so I'm not getting stuff in my eyes. Always a good recommendation. And if you look up there, the seal got stuck in there. Make sure that that doesn't happen. So you wanna make sure that this part comes down as well. Let's go look at the new one compared to this one. Here's our new one. And if you look at that side profile, you can see the rubber gasket sticking out quite a bit more than on the old one. There was a lot of compression going on there. So another reason why it would be important if you were changing the fluid or doing the pan on an older vehicle like this to replace it. Now, let's see. We're gonna pop that guy back up in there. I guess I had the camera in the wrong spot, but we're just gonna clip it on over that area there. It just barely holds itself in place, like that. Put a little oil on the seal, and we're gonna work next to get these guys out. I can still feel a little bit of play in them, like there's some squish to the rubber, but not much. All right, we're gonna try a set of tiny needle nose pliers, see if we can get these out. Try to get in between them. Oh, that just ripped, that didn't work. And the valve body there. There we go, we're coming slowly. All right, now we'll go match this one up to one on the bench. For this transmission, that's the long one, and that's the part number ending in 281. There it is right there. And I can see just how compressed it is. Put them side by side, right there. You should be able to see the right one is shorter by enough to probably matter. There's nothing there. We're gonna put a little bit of lube on this guy, and then we're just gonna drive her home. We wanna get the little ears here to line up in there as well. So do your best to get everybody lined up. As you're putting it in, you should be able to rotate it to get that set just right. And then it'll click in there. It doesn't go all the way in so that it's not sticking out. That wouldn't be right, because we want it to have a little bit of rubber there in order to create the seal. Pull our next one out. Man, rubber is pretty hard. Definitely time to do this. There we go. Okay, and this is the medium length, part number ending in 280. And same story as the last one. It's a bit shorter than this new one. Grab a little bit of fluid, put on the outside. Like that. And the last two are the part number ending in 279, the short. It'd be a real bummer if one of these like broke half off in there. Have to use a reverse drill bit or something to get it out. Really glad that didn't happen to me. So I took a picture of my valve body, transmission here, and you can see I wrote the torque numbers on there. I also wrote the torque on here. So 1, 2, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'll put this picture here for my transmission on the screen in color so you can see what it looks like. But this will hopefully give me a reference. Now, when you're going in with the transmission, it's vitally important that you're not torquing it down too abruptly. You want to bring it home with 1 and 2 up into the trans so that you're not tweaking it, and then slowly work your way around up to the torque spec, which is 8 or 10 Newton meters. I think I have everything enough out of the way. We want to make sure to line up our neutral pole here. That pole's right there. Right here is the dowel, and then over here is where the speed sensor goes up onto the case. So it should all fit together. Take your time with this, because as discussed before, there's a lot of money hanging up here. Try to get everything situated in a way that it's going to be quick to access. It's not exactly super heavy, but it's not light either. Take the foot poles away. Maybe. Missing something here. Okay, 2 screws in there. There's enough fluid dripping in my face. You're gonna want to take a shower after this job. Jeez. It's got to be lined up. All the screws are going in, nice and straight. I'm not going in the torque sequence right now. I'm just running in circles. Writing the numbers on the valve body sure makes this a lot easier. Okay, go around one more time. Okay, now we got to put our sealing ring in. We've got a couple sets of O-rings here that you're going to want to lube up. And remember, when you look inside, there is an alignment ring. And we're going to basically be going all the way up to this edge right here. It's going to take a little bit of work and some fussing to get it in there. So take your time and see how well it goes. We're just going to put a little bit of lubrication on there. And again, you don't want to touch those contacts. So you can put the seal in there and rotate it, and it'll lock into place. See, that doesn't work right there. Bam, it drops into place. Now we can start walking it in. And what I found is if you gently walk up, down, you can force it in there. It takes a hot second, but you know it's all the way in when you can close the retaining clip. It does take a bit of effort. So it's gonna be one of those last millimeter things right there. So it's trying to pull out right now.
Oh, grow up.
The retainer ring is in. If I look closely on the edge, it's all the way up to the edge of where the old one was, where I was prying especially. I was prying on this edge here. Sometimes you have to put like a wood mallet or something in here to push on it if you can't get enough leverage. I'm using a lift, so for me, I was able to get enough leverage with my fingers. But again, be careful with the contact and everything in there. You really don't want to damage anything. And we just have to get it all lined back up and twist her home. Okay. I almost forgot to do this and was ready to put the pan up. I've got the pan here on my workbench below the camera, and I'm really glad I didn't. I saw my seal on the bench. So, learning lessons, don't do that. To get our pan in, there's nothing special that we have to do here. Make sure that you knock all your cameras around, lubricate this seal, and drive that up into its spot. Make sure your sealing flange is all clean and dry. Remember, we've been fighting with a Mechatronic, so there's bound to be fluid around here. Just give her a good wipe down. If you have brake clean, awesome. If you don't, make sure you just get it clean. And then also make sure you got your new bolts, and hopefully you're shopping from a reputable source like FCP. Not sponsored, but would love to be. So let's lube up our seal. Double check that our sealing tab is all locked. Looks good. All right. Get a couple in, and then there we go. Now I'm just gonna go around and get them all in. Then I'm gonna come back and I'll torque in a minute. There was our seal up inside. I feel there's a little bit of tension on there. Yep. So our torque, the way that this one works is if you look at the instructions, they're looking for essentially a crisscross pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way around, middle to back. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start right in the middle. I have to imagine that perhaps the old pan was broken because whoever installed it didn't follow torque sequence, because there was no damage to the outside of it. So I can't imagine that it was anything else. There's this corner right here, 10 Newton meters. That is not much. These are great reasons to have a high quality torque wrench that goes down to a smaller number. A lot of torque wrenches only go down to, 10, 15, 20 Newton meters. This one is a deca-Newton meter, so I can get really, really fine. And it's good to operate within the range of your torque wrench, whatever that may be. Okie dokie, let's fill her up. So there are a lot of ways to get the transmission fluid in the car. Most popular is going to be something like this. Stick this in the bottle. This isn't actually for this bottle, but it would work. A fluid transfer pump. This is one of the methods that I use when I'm trying to do a small amount of fluid, put it in here, stick it up somewhere, squeeze. I actually made this bottle out of, I'm pretty sure this was a transfer case fluid 20 odd years ago. And what I did was I epoxied this nozzle in the top, I put a valve stem in the bottom, and a cap on the other side, a bolt that I can just take out and stuff inside somewhere. What I could do was fill this up, put air to it, and push all the fluid in. This works really well for like single cord applications, like on transfer cases or differentials or any number of different things. But in this case, I have a special surprise. This is my MIDI-vac model MV6400 fluid dispenser. And what this does is, just like my MIDI-vac extractor or pumper that I have, that one is only for extracting because it's contaminated. This one has a nozzle that you can put in the end, has a valve that I can shut off, and a quick disconnect that I can plop in here, so I can pressurize the vessel, and then I can open it up and apply the fluid to the vehicle. This works remarkably well, especially when we're dealing with something like 7 to 9 quarts. Now, a fluid fill on this vehicle should be around-ish 7 quarts. I think it's missing some fluid, and because we dropped the torque converter, The Mechatronics, it's definitely missing some fluid. So I have 9 quarts. Hopefully that's enough because from what I understand, the ZF Lifeguard 6 has different additives in it than the Lifeguard 8, which I have some spare for my wife's car. So what I'm going to do is put this in, we're going to fill her up, and then we'll do the warm-up procedure, which means we have to get the transmission up to temperature before we can actually fill it. So let's do that. Now, I can hear somebody in the background saying,
Why would I spend that much money on yada 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 tool?
I don't even know how much this costs now. I'll throw it up on the screen. You can see the actual price of buying one right now. Well, I've had this something like 15 years. So I've used it over and over and over and over and over and over. You get the point. It pays for itself in the convenience of working at home on your own vehicle, which is why I have to imagine a lot of you are watching a channel like this, trying to figure out how to do it at home. I do the same thing. This is my nightly routine. It's nighttime right now, but I like to watch YouTube, see what's going on, see if I can learn something. I can always learn something. So a tool like this is going to pay for itself over time. I usually don't buy tools until I've needed it, wanted it, or had to have it more than once. So we'll go pump this in and then we'll fill it up again and then we'll get to our top off. Now I would recommend having a catch can, catch basin, something, because you're going to make a mess here. So just bear that in mind. It's not as though we haven't already been making quite the mess. Ow, man, how many times am I gonna hit my head today? So you see, it's just that easy. Pump and slowly fill. Have your new drain plug ready to go. So I'm in the process of editing this video and I can't find the footage of me explaining how to fill up the transmission. You want to go about this in a pretty specific way, so let me cover that real quick. As we were talking about filling up our pumper or however you're getting fluid into it, do that. Pump as much fluid into the cold transmission not running first. As soon as the pan is full and there's fluid barely dripping out of the fill plug, fill it up some more and throw that plug in there. You're gonna need it. Then you're gonna go up to the top, either lower your vehicle, get in your vehicle, climb up, whatever that looks like. And you're going to start it and it's gonna suck all that fluid up into the torque converter and up through the transmission, run it through the gears, and you're going to try to sit in reverse, you're going to sit in neutral, you're going to sit in drive for like 10 seconds each. Move it over into manual, it'll let you do it in first and second, won't let you go to third typically, and then back over and cycle through. Get underneath it and start pumping as much fluid in as you can, up to about that 7-ish quart range. Then you're going to want a scanner on the car that can read the temperature of the transmission, and you want it to be between 30 and 50 degrees C. When you're in between this range, you can pull the drain plug again, and there should be just a drip of fluid coming out. If you have a flow of fluid, let it drip until there's just a little bit. If there's no fluid, put more fluid in. All right, it still says 23 degrees. It might take a minute for it to warm up all the way. Chinese making some fun noises. 24 degrees. We got a little ways to go, but I imagine it's going to take quite a bit of fluid right now because it was low. Transmission sounds kind of squeaky. I don't like the way it sounds. As it's filling with fluid though, some of those noises are going away. I've added 2.5 quarts since starting it so far. This is one of those instances, man. Does this pumper pay off in spades? I'm gonna let that keep filling, go grab more fluid. So the scanner is asking if small quantities of fluid are coming out, and I said no. It said keep filling it up then. I've got nothing coming out of here. Hopefully my 2 extra quarts was enough. Little drip. Okay, we've got a small drip. Now we're gonna put the plug back in and we'll continue forward with the service plan. We'll get the transmission up to temperature and then we'll check again. It might be worthwhile cycling the gears again because that was a lot of fluid to add. All right, we're at 34 degrees C. So we're gonna pull the plug again and see how much, if any, fluid comes out. All right, just a dribble. That's good. We're gonna put the plug back in, lower it, run it through the gears, let it cool, and then I'm gonna check it again, just because I do know that it was quite low. I've got 2 quarts left, which means I put 7 in entirely. More like 1.5 quarts, but that means I did put a little more than what a service would have called for. All right, this is gonna be the moment of truth. I've had the car warming up a little bit. It's the next day. I double checked the transmission twice. So I let it get up into that 30 to 40 degree range, check the fluid, let it get up into the 40 to 50 degree range, check the fluid again with cycling the transmission in between. Now, mind you, we're doing this together. I haven't driven the car, I haven't done anything. I haven't even really looked around the inside except to do the fuel pump in the last episode. I've just been chasing problems. So this is gonna be our first drive. It shows 0.1 on the dash from me rolling it around here in the shop. And I'm in reverse. Let's see how it does. The brakes are all rusty, so I imagine they're gonna be a bit noisy as we're moving around. Windows work, it's a plus. Save the passenger mirror. Doesn't want to adjust, that's not a plus. No movement there. All right, we'll have to come back around to that. So we're just gonna try to go around the block, see how it does. I got the park distance working now. The cameras are a little blown out. I don't know if that's a normal thing with these. Power steering is a little stiff. Shifts in and out of gear pretty nice. Actually drives under its own power. So far, so good. Now, since we've adjusted the adaptations or reset the adaptations, we basically need to wait for them to liven up, so to speak, or find their new balance. So I'm gonna just drive around here in the neighborhood for a little while, let this thing figure its life out, and then I'll check back with you to see if it's shifting good or not. So we've been driving for a little while. We've driven around in regular mode and we've put it over in sport, and the shifts are getting noticeably smoother. That's a very positive sign that we're gonna be good with this transmission, and that whatever was happening before was due in part to the fact that the fluid was low. So all that being said, I'm about ready to move on to episode 3 on this build. Now, this again is Project Cheapskate, which means I'm trying not to invest a ton of money where I don't need to. As much sweat equity as I can and stuff I've got around the shop. So in the next episode, what we're gonna cover is we're gonna cover what I'm gonna call a bunch of the small stuff. I'm gonna just go around on the vehicle and try to fix whatever I can with what I have in the shop and just address any small issues that I can. Now, since I've been able to drive it, there is a suspension clunk up front, which I'm going to attribute to the thrust control arm bushings, or thrust arms bushings, as I would just say normally. So those you really can't just fix offhand. I may wind up ordering some new bushings and pressing those in. That'll come later. As far as leaks, I do know that I've got an oil pan leak and I've got an oil filter housing leaking. Now, I didn't want to order parts for that if the car wasn't going to be drivable. Now that I know it drives, I'm going to clean up underneath some more and I'm going to prep for those in later episodes. So we'll do the oil pan in one and the filter housing and cooler in another episode. If you're still watching, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's difficult for me to figure out what to do next with a build like this, but I hope that you've enjoyed this process and progress, and you come back to watch another one. Like, subscribe, comment, do all those things. You know what to do. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.